The Kingdom of Kongo was a large kingdom in the western part of Central Africa. The founders of the kingdom were Kikongo-speaking people, and the current spelling of Congo with a capital C comes from the Portuguese translation. The kingdom was founded around 1319 CE through the political marriage of Nina and Zima of the Mpemba Kasi and Lukweni Luansanze of the Mbata. This alliance cemented the alliance between the two Kikongo-speaking people and the new kingdom will reach its peak in the mid-1600s. The Kongo Kingdom lies between the Congo River and the Atlantic Ocean. It dominated Central Africa for several centuries due to its highly organized political system and sophisticated economy. In this video, we will explore the development of the Kingdom of Kongo, its rise and subsequent fall. Please kindly take a second to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so. According to Congo tradition, the origins of the Kingdom of Kongo's roots lay in Vungo, a small kingdom north of the Congo River. Over time, Vungo expanded its authority against the region until it reached Mpemba, one of the older kingdoms. Over the years, the Vungo and Mpemba kingdoms, now united, continued to expand. The Kingdom of Kongo was headed by a single ruler, known as Ikani. The kingdom was divided into different regions, and each of these regions was governed by a governor appointed by the Ikani. Under the governor's authority were local officials who were responsible for collecting tributes which were paid to the government in accordance with the size of each region's population. These tributes were paid using resources like ivory, millet, palm wine, and animal skins, which were collected from local chiefs and presented before the king at the capital. This presentation was done at massive annual ceremonies where Congo's great and powerful enjoyed an extravagant ceremony full of eating and drinking. Those who didn't work for the government were divided into two groups. There were the free people, mainly craftsmen and farmers, known as the Babuta, and the slaves, known as the Babika. This slave class was mainly composed of prisoners of war and debtors who were unable to pay off their outstanding obligations. The system of paying tributes was believed to be a way of maintaining divine favor with the gods, since the king was supposedly appointed by the gods. It was also a two-way street, and in return for their offerings, the local officials received the king's favor, which essentially boiled down to military protection and nice gifts like fine food and clothing. Unfortunately, these gifts don't reach those who paid the taxes. The Kingdom of Kongo was governed by the Royal Council, known as the Nembanda-Banda, which roughly translates as the top of the top. This council is composed of 12 members divided into 3 groups: the bureaucrats, electors, and matrons. Senior officials chose the members of the Royal Council, and electors varied over time. There was probably never a completely fixed list. Rather, senior officers who exercised power did so. Many kings tried to choose their successor, but not always successfully. The bureaucratic posts are 4 non-electing posts, which include Wenelumbo, Lord of the Palace, Major Domo; Filantu, Most Trusted Counselor, Prime Minister; Wenevangu, Lord of Deeds or Actions, High Judge, particularly in adultery cases; and Wenebampa, Treasurer. These 4 are all appointed by the king and have a great influence on the day-to-day operations of the court. The electors. These consisted of 4 other councillors who worked to elect the king and also occupy important positions. The electors are composed of the Wenevunda, Lord of Vunda, a small territory north of the capital with mostly religious obligations, who lead the electors. The Wenimbata, Lord of Mbata province, directly east of the capital and run by the Nsaka Laukanda, which provides the king's great wife. Soyo, Lord of Soyo province west of the capital, and historically the wealthiest province due to it being the only port and having access to salt. And the fourth elector, likely Dinwenimba, Lord of Bamba province south of the capital and capital general of the armies. The Wenevuda was appointed by the king from the Sakonevundakanda. The Wendembata was nominally confirmed by the king from the Sakulaukanda. The Wenesoyo was appointed by the king from the Dasiva Kanda, and the Wenebamba was appointed by the king from anywhere he desired, but was usually a close family relation. These four men elected the king, while the Wenevunda and Wenembata played crucial roles in the coronation. Matrons. The last group of the royal council comprised four women who wielded a great influence on the council. They were led by the Weninziba Mpugu, a queen mother, usually the king's paternal aunt. The next most powerful woman after her was the Wenebanda, the king's great wife, chosen from the Sakulaukanda. Two other posts were given to the next most important women in the kingdom, being widowed queens dowagas or the matriarchs of former ruling kandas. Zandu, the market, is a major cornerstone of the economic and social center of the people of the Congo. The Zandu is usually an area that was reserved for peace and commerce. The chief authority ensured security in this location by placing the area in neutral territory that was defended against possible attack. They also provided the freedom to trade as well as the implementation of price standardizations. Areas set aside for the display of merchandise, embargo, were separated by type. As such, there is an area for blacksmithing equipment, one for slaves, etc. Besides, being a commercial center, Zandu was also a place where political and matrimonial negotiations were carried out, a place for the dissemination of news, an execution area for criminals, and where rituals of sorcerers were made. Trade was carried out with a special local currency known as the Zimbu shell. These shells were the shells of Olivella nana, a sea snail that originally came from an offshore island called Luanda, around 240 kilometers away from the capital. Initially, the shells were a way of storing wealth and a way to measure the worth of goods. However, over time, the shells started being used more like coins and were used to pay for goods and services. The shells could be used to buy anything and were stored in money pots in increments of 40, 100, 250, 400, and 500. For larger amounts, the shells were measured in funda, 1,000 big shells, lufuko, 10,000, and kofu, 20,000. A fowl would go for 100 shells, while a goat would set you back around 2,000 shells. Most tools cost around 300 shells, and slaves were the most expensive commodity, with an average female slave costing about 20,000 shells and a male 30,000 shells. Izubu shells were collected from the island of Luanda and kept as a royal monopoly. The smaller shells were fleeted out so that only the large shells entered the marketplace as currency. The Congo administration regarded their land as render, revenue assignment. The government exerted a monetary aid tax for each villager, and this was often paid in kind, and it formed the basis for the kingdom's finances. The king granted titles and income based on the aid tax, and orders reported annually to the court of their superior for evaluation and renewal. Provincial governors also paid a portion of the tax returns from their provinces to the king. Dutch visitors to Congo in the 1640s reported this income as 20 million Zimbu shells. In addition, the crown collected its special taxes and levies, including tolls on the substantial trade that passed through the kingdom, especially the lucrative clothes trade between the great clothes producing region of the 7 kingdoms of Congo Dianaza, the eastern regions, also called Momboise. The 7 in Congo and the coast, especially the Portuguese colony of Luanda. When King Garcia II gave up the island of Luanda and its royal fisheries to the Portuguese in 1651, he switched the kingdom's currency to raffia cloth. The cloth was napkin-sized and called pusu. In the 17th century, 100 pusu could buy 1 slave, implying a value greater than that of the Nzubu currency. Raffia cloth was also called lubongo and bongo if it's been referred to in its plural state. Initial encounters with the European powers in Africa were often marked by violence and exploitation, as the European powers sought to expand their territories and gain wealth through the brutal practice of enslaving local populations. However, for some groups within the Kingdom of Kongo, such as the Babuta, the first contact with Europeans was a more positive experience. The Kingdom of Kongo first came into contact with the Portuguese after they colonized the nearby island of Sao Tome and Principe in around 1470 AD. The Portuguese were big players in the slave trade, and the kingdom's slave market saw a massive boom. In return for their slaves, the Congolese received luxuries such as cotton, clothing, silk, glazed china, glass mirrors, and well-crafted shoes. Fearing such luxuries would lead to social unrest, their consumption was tightly controlled by the king, and only the aristocracy was allowed to access them. In 1483, the Portuguese explorer Diogo Cao reached the coast of the Congo Kingdom. Cao left some of his men in Congo and in return took some Congo nobles to Portugal. He returned to Congo with the Congo nobles in 1485. By then, the commissioning, hiring, or even kidnapping of local Africans to use as local ambassadors, especially for newly contracted areas, was an already established practice. At that point, the ruling king, Zinga Ankuru, decided he would become a Christian and sent another large mission headed by Kala Fusu, the noble who had earlier gone to Portugal as a hostage. They remained in Europe for nearly 4 years, studying Christianity, learning, reading, and writing. The mission returned with Cao along with Roman Catholic priests and soldiers in 1491, baptizing Zinga Ankuru, as well as his principal nobles, starting with the ruler of Soyo, the coastal province. Zinga Ankuru took the Christian name of Jao I in honor of Portugal's king at the time, Jao II. Jao I ruled until his death around 1509 and was succeeded by his son, Afonso, Mveba, and Zinga. He faced a serious challenge from a half-brother, Panzo Akitima. The king overcame his brother in a battle waged at Banza, Congo. According to Afonso's account, sent to Portugal in 1506, he was able to win the battle thanks to the intervention of a heavenly vision of the cross of St. James and the Virgin Mary. Inspired by these events, he subsequently designed a coat of arms for Congo that was used by all following kings on official documents, royal paraphernalia, and the like until 1860. While King Jao I later reverted to his traditional beliefs, Afonso I established Christianity as a state religion of his kingdom. In the early days, conversion to Christianity was reserved for the king and the upper class, and this helped increase the king's prestige in the eyes of his people, so Christianity was in essence a show of wealth. Following Afonso's conversion, Catholicism was made the royal household official religion, and the capital was named São Salvador to reflect its newfound European influence. Afonso then set up a Congolese version of the Catholic Church, paying for the building of churches through royal assets and taxation. Of course, converting deeply traditional people is always risky, as people tend to be tied to their cultural traditions. Afonso got around this by creating a syncretic version of Christianity within the help of religious advisors from Portugal. This meant that a special type of Christianity was taught in Congo that blended Catholic teachings and traditions with local ones. There was also a class element to the kingdom's Christian conversion. Since Christianity was largely associated with European wealth, only the upper classes were encouraged to convert at first. This gave the ruling class another way to delineate between the kingdom's classes. It is worth noting that it wasn't just their religion and wealth that the Portuguese brought to the Kingdom of Congo. They also brought European technical knowledge such as masonry, carpentry, and stock breeding. Along with these skills, they brought in American crops like maize, cassava, and tobacco. However, all these deeds weren't done out of the goodness of Portugal's heart, but were rather all an attempt at westernizing the Kingdom of Congo so that it would become a more valuable trading partner. More importantly, Portugal wanted Congo tied to it as closely as possible so that it could use the kingdom as a jumping-off point in its attempt to conquer large chunks of Central Africa. The Portuguese were not particularly adept at hiding their true motivations, and their constant political and religious interference would eventually lead to bloodshed, and the bloody relationship became sour. The Congo kings were happy to put up with the Europeans as long as the relationship was mutually beneficial. But things went downhill when the Portuguese grew greedy and began cutting the king out, carrying out the slave raids, and sometimes even kidnapping Congolese citizens. Simultaneously, the Portuguese were also trying to take control of Congo's lucrative copper mines, bringing its laws and convert the common people to Christianity. This was an act that risked blowing the lines between social classes, and it upset the elites. These actions made the Congo kings realize that the Portuguese weren't worth the effort and they could do better on their own. Neither side trusted the other side anymore. The Portuguese realized Congo was looking to cut them out, and the Congo kings realized that Portuguese influence was undermining their authority as the Congo's one true ruler. From the mid-16th century onwards, things went downhill rapidly for the Kingdom of Congo. The Portuguese, tired of the Congo kings protecting their interest, moved southward to the region of Dongo. These falling out would later lead to several wars with the Portuguese in the region. Without Portuguese income, the Congo kings soon faced internal strife. The kingdom's elite class had developed expensive foreign taste, and the lower classes were tired of the ever-increasing taxes they were having to pay to support this taste. As the king's power waned, his regional governors began to turn away. Things unraveled for the kingdom around 1568 when a group of warriors known as the Jaga attacked from the south and began invading the Kingdom of Congo. Rather than fight back, the kingdom's tired, disgruntled, and overtaxed people rose and joined them. The Congo royal family only survived by escaping to an island off the coast. From this point onward, the Kingdom of Congo was torn apart by constant civil wars between different factions claiming the throne. With the once great kingdom on its knees, its neighbors began to stick the boot in. The Kingdom of Congo was defeated by its southern neighbors at the Battle of Buwila, and the capital was sacked and abandoned in 1678. By 1710, the Kingdom of Congo had effectively collapsed, with the region being carved up among various groups of traders who established their communities and alliances. Though there were several more kings, they had little to no real power, and the kingdom remained in a state of disarray for centuries. It was not until the early 20th century that the Portuguese, who had long sought to control the region, finally succeeded in absorbing it into the Angola colony. A common characteristic of political life in the Kingdom of Congo was fierce competition over succession to the throne, and as a result, the country was disturbed by many rebellions and revolts. Eventually, the Kingdom of Congo would fall to scheming nobles, feuding royal factions, and the transatlantic slave trade, initiating its eventual decline. The Kingdom of Congo was a truly remarkable civilization that deserves to be recognized and remembered for its significant contributions to African history and culture. Its powerful rulers, innovative economic system, and unique blend of traditional beliefs and Christianity made it a force to be reckoned with in Central Africa for centuries. Although the kingdom eventually fell to outside pressures, its legacy lives on in the cultures and societies of modern-day Angola, Congo, and Gabon. By studying the history of the Kingdom of Congo, we can gain a better understanding of the complexity and richness of African civilizations and the damage so often caused by Western colonization.
Button, like the video, turn on your notifications, and share the video with your connections.
If you haven't subscribed
Thank
to
you
the channel,
once again for
please
staying
kindly
with
click on the
Explore
subscribe
Africa
button,
with the
like the
Moria.
video,
See you
turn
in
on
our
your
next video.
notifications, and share the video with your connections. Thank you once again for staying with Explore Africa with the Moria. See you in our next video.
You know how much you want to pay because you have to negotiate and negotiate and negotiate.